If you can't get beyond your body, and your attention is on your body, then you're matter trying to change matter. If you're thinking about your cell phone and your partner or your kids, or none of these are bad, but if you can't get beyond them, they own you. If you're thinking about how much time it's going to take or how much time the meditation is going, you haven't dissociated from the very world of three-dimensional reality to create something differently with. So that process of overcoming ourselves, that process of overcoming is the process of becoming. As an example, people stand on the stage, and they tell their testimonials, their stories at our events, whether it's stage 4 cancer, blindness, deafness, MS, lupus. We've seen just about everything. Parkinson's. So many people say, I really believe that this information, or that you could actually create a better life for yourself, or you could heal yourself. I always believed that it was true, and I saw the testimonials of other people. I've read the information. I saw the scientific research. I just never believed it could happen to me, or that I could do it. Now, this is a big moment. This is the moment you come out of the bleachers and you get on a playing field, because in order for that person to prove that their mind can affect their body, they would have to show up every day and do the work. If they don't show up, then they don't believe it's possible. If they do show up every day, they do believe it's possible. And you keep showing up every day after a period of time, you start feeling worthy to receive it. And the universe only gives us what we think we're worthy of receiving. So it's the overcoming process that is the becoming process. People who are sick in this work, I can guarantee you with stage 4 cancer that has metastasized to every organ, every tissue, every bone in their body, and they've gotten the diagnosis and the prognosis, I'm sure there were days where they felt fear. And they had to make one of two choices, to either do the work or surrender to fear. And they showed up that day, and they overcame their fear a little bit more and surrendered to love. That's a victory. There were days where I'm certain they didn't feel good. They didn't feel physically good, and I know that it was probably hard for them to think greater than how they felt. They couldn't do that if they were still their body. They would have to get beyond their body in order to change, and they showed up that day and they overcame their body a little bit more. And I'm sure there were days where they had self-doubt. In fact, many of them, their disease got worse before it got better, and they could have easily listened to their family and to the voice in their head that said it's not working. But they showed up anyway, and they did the work, and they overcame their doubt that day. And I know there were days where they thought they didn't have enough time because they had children and work and all kinds of obligations, but they made time. And it was the overcoming that actually created the becoming. And so they weren't visualizing anything. They weren't affirming anything. They were changing. Now, many of them would have a great meditation, get up feeling wonderful, feeling like connected to the emotions of their future, and their sleeping patterns got better, had more energy, their pain diminished, but their blood values and their scans were still the same. They didn't say, oh, well, I kind of got a little bit better, but this doesn't work. That would be the old self, returning back to the old personality. They were more concerned about what they still had to change about themselves in order for their health to change. So they realized that many of them, 1 hour of meditation and feeling wonderful, and then spending 15 hours of your remaining day reacting and responding to everyone and everything in your life and believing those thoughts that are just hardwired programs in the brain and acting and behaving like the old self. Genes aren't going to change that way, so all of a sudden now it became practical. I got to get so good at doing this with my eyes closed. I got to do it with my eyes open. Now, this is the big game, because you got to be able to self-regulate. And so what became very practical to them is, now I'm going to rehearse how I'm going to be on the Zoom call. Now I'm going to rehearse how I'm going to be with my children, how I'm going to be with my ex. I'm going to monitor my responses. There's got to be a better way to be now. Now the game becomes very real, right? And then they review at the end of the day, when did I fall from grace? When did I lose it? When did I go unconscious? Tomorrow's another lifetime. Tomorrow's when I didn't fail, I just went unconscious. Okay, tomorrow I'm gonna just work on that one thing. So now they're really working on the process of transformation. It's no longer about their health condition. They're not focused on their health condition. They're focused on change, right? Nothing changes in our life until we change. So when you hear those stories and the person has to really overcome their belief that this could work for everybody else, they just never believed it could work for me. When they get really super aware that the game is about change, and they got to get really good at doing it with their eyes open, and they have to monitor their responses to everyone and everything in their life, because if they don't, the response is actually weakening the organism. They got to catch their thoughts, because that thought that they let slip by could actually knock their brain and body out of homeostasis and turn on the stress response. So now the game changes now, and it takes an enormous amount of energy, and it takes an enormous amount of awareness. And it's not easy, and if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But you ask that person who stands on the stage, that's the 4-minute mile, about their disease. They'll tell you two things. My disease was my greatest teacher. They'll tell you that. And you'll ask them, where's the disease now? Where is it? They'll say, it's in the old person. I'm somebody else. They didn't visualize anything. They didn't affirm anything. They just kept practicing overcoming. And it's the overcoming process that actually affects the becoming process.
What determines the difference in human actions? Throughout my life, I have passionately sought the answer to these questions. One thing is clear to me. Human beings are not random creatures. Everything we do for a reason. We may not be aware of the reason consciously, but there is undoubtedly a single driving force behind all human behavior. This force impacts every facet of our lives, from our relationships and finances to our bodies and brains. What is this force that is controlling you even now and will continue to do so for the rest of your life? Pain and pleasure. Everything you and I do, we do either out of our need to avoid pain or our desire to gain pleasure. So often, I hear people talk about changes they want to make in their lives, but they can't get themselves to follow through. They feel frustrated, overwhelmed, even angry with themselves because they know they need to take action, but they can't get themselves to do it. There is one elementary reason. They keep trying to change their behavior, which is the effect instead of dealing with the cause behind it. Understanding and utilizing the forces of pain and pleasure will allow you once and for all to create the lasting changes and improvements you desire for yourself and those you care about. Failure to understand this force dooms you to a future of living in reaction like an animal or a machine. Perhaps this sounds like a complete oversimplification, but think about it. Why don't you do some of the things you know you should do? After all, what is procrastination? It's when you know you should do something, but you still don't do it. Why not? The answer is simple. At some level, you believe that taking action in this moment would be more painful than just putting it off. Yet, have you ever had the experience of putting something off for so long that suddenly you felt pressure to just do it, to get it done? What happened? You changed what you linked pain and pleasure to. Suddenly not taking action became more painful than putting it off. A man who suffers before is necessary, suffers more than is necessary. What keeps you from approaching that man or woman of your dreams? What keeps you from starting that new business you've been planning for years? Why do you keep putting off that diet? Why do you avoid completing your thesis? Why haven't you taken control of your financial investment portfolio? What prevents you from doing whatever it takes to make your life exactly as you've imagined it? Even though you know that all these actions would benefit you, that they could definitely bring pleasure to your life, you fail to act simply because in that moment you associate more pain to doing what's necessary than missing the opportunity. After all, what if you approached that person and they rejected you? What if you tried to start that new business but failed and lost the security you have in your present job? What if you started a diet and went through the pain of starving yourself, only to gain the weight back eventually anyway? What if you made an investment and lost your money? So why even try? For most people, the fear of loss is much greater than the desire for gain, which would drive you more. Keeping someone from stealing the $100,000 you've earned over the last 5 years, or the potential of earning $100,000 in the next 5. The fact is that most people would work much harder to hang on to what they have than they would to take the risks necessary to get what they really want from their lives. The secret of success is learning how to use pain and pleasure instead of having pain and pleasure use you. If you do that, you're in control of your life. If you don't, life controls you. If we link massive pain to any behavior or emotional pattern, we will avoid indulging in it at all costs. We can use this understanding to harness the force of pain and pleasure to change virtually anything in our lives, from a pattern of procrastinating to drug use. How do we do this? Let's say, for example, you want to keep your children off drugs. The time to reach them is before they experiment and before someone else teaches them the false association that drugs equal pleasure. My wife and I decided that the most powerful way to make sure our kids would never use drugs was to cause them to link massive pain to drugs. We knew that unless we taught them what drugs were really about, someone else might convince them that drugs were a useful way of escaping pain. If we fail to direct our own associations to pain and pleasure, we're living no better than animals or machines, continually reacting to our environment, allowing whatever comes up next to determine the direction and quality of our lives. Our behavior, both conscious and unconscious, has been rigged by pain and pleasure from so many sources. Childhood peers, moms and dads, teachers, coaches, movie and television heroes, and the list goes on. You may or may not know precisely when programming and conditioning occurred. It might have been something someone said, an incident at school, an award-winning sports event, an embarrassing moment, straight as on your report card, or maybe failing grades. All of these contributed to who you are today. I cannot emphasize strongly enough that what you link pain and pleasure to will shape your destiny. As you review your own life, can you recall experiences that formed your neuro-associations and thus set in motion the chain of causes and effects that brought you to where you are today? What meaning do you attach to things? If you're single, do you look upon marriage wistfully as a joyous adventure with your life mate? Or do you dread it as a heavy ball and chain? As you sit down to dinner tonight, do you consume food matter? Of factly as an opportunity to refuel your body? Or do you devour it as your sole source of pleasure? Men, as well as women, are much oftener led by their hearts than by their understandings. Though we'd like to deny it, the fact remains that what drives our behavior is instinctive reaction to pain and pleasure, not intellectual calculation. Intellectually, we may believe that eating chocolate is bad for us, but we'll still reach for it. Why? Because we're not driven so much by what we intellectually know, but rather by what we've learned to link pain and pleasure to in our nervous system. It's our neuro-associations, the associations we've established in our nervous systems that determine what we'll do. Although we'd like to believe it's our intellect that really drives us, in most cases, our emotions. The sensations that we link to our thoughts are what truly drive us. Many times we try to override the system. For a while we stick to a diet. We finally pushed ourselves over the edge because we have so much pain. We will have solved the problem for the moment. But if we haven't eliminated the cause of the problem, it will resurface. Ultimately, in order for a change to last, we must link pain to our old behavior and pleasure to our new behavior and condition it until it's consistent. Remember, we will all do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. Going on a diet and overriding our pain in the short term by pure willpower never lasts simply because we still link pain to giving up fattening foods. For this change to be long term, We've got to link pain to eating those foods so that we no longer even desire them, and pleasure to eat more of the foods that nourish us. People who are fit and healthy believe that nothing tastes as good as thin fields, and they love foods that nourish them. In fact, they often link pleasure to pushing the plate away with food still on it. It symbolizes to them that they're in control of their lives. The truth is that we can learn to condition our minds, bodies, and emotions to link pain or pleasure to whatever we choose. By changing what we link pain and pleasure to, we will instantly change our behaviors. With smoking, for example, all you must do is link enough pain to smoking and enough pleasure to quitting. You have the ability to do this right now, but you might not exercise this capability because you've trained your body to link pleasure to smoking, or you fear that stopping would be too painful. Yet, if you meet anyone who has stopped, you will find that this behavior changed in one day. The day they truly changed what smoking meant to them.